So welcome everyone. I'm Adrian Matak, Senior Policy Manager for GBBC, focused on EMEA policy. And before I introduced our panel is called AI x Blockchain, Perfect Marriage or More Fake News. And by fake news today, we don't mean politics, we mean something more technical, in the sense of being able to rely on AI's outputs thanks to the deployment of blockchain infrastructures and blockchain solutions to the stack. And every couple of weeks we see another paper about the return on investment that enterprises have on AI. Oftentimes the conclusions of these are contradictory. So today we can think about how do we maximize this return on investment in terms of making AI more reliable due to this marriage, or perhaps we're not there yet. So before we proceed further, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Megan.
Great. I'm Megan Klimen. I'm the founding officer of the Filecoin Foundation and the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. For anyone who doesn't know, Filecoin is a distributed cloud storage project that uses blockchain to prove that the storage is happening, a little bit like Airbnb for cloud storage. And so we have a lot to say about how data gets used in this next stage of the economy.
Great, thank you. Paola.
Hi, I'm Paola. Some of you know me because I used to be the director of Home of Blockchain, but I'm an innovation and technology advisor working with NGOs, working in sustainability, working as well with, mainly with the Swiss government in different projects, with Secretary of Economic Development, with Vietnam and so on. So mainly with AI and some blockchain, so thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Sylvia Sanchez. I am part of Ava Labs, and I currently manage a project known as the Avalanche Policy Coalition. Before it was called Owl Explains, but we kept the owl logo. And pretty much we create educational content directed to policymakers, but also for curious people exploring blockchain, and we are at this intersection of law, tech, and policy. I work very closely with our GC, Lee Schneider, and the rest of our legal team. And we pretty much aim to reduce the hype and just educate people on the use cases and what you can do with this technology. So I think it'll be interesting to also bring this blockchain policy into the conversation with AI. So yeah, I'm excited.
Good afternoon. Oh, it doesn't work. Thank you. Good afternoon. Yeah, it is working. Eric Piscini, I'm the CEO of Hashgraph. Hashgraph is the team behind the Hedera network. If you don't know Hedera network, we happen to have one of the co-founders of the Hedera network, Man Sarman here. So after the panel, don't come to me, just go to him. Hashgraph and Hedera have been around since 2018. It's a blockchain layer 1. If you're in blockchain, you know Hedera already. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, so as you can see, we are well prepared to talk about the topic. But I think that there is a temptation, especially in places like Davos, and especially with people at the cross-section of finance, technology, law, and all the kind of frontier tech, to be very ideological about these kinds of solutions and say that basically all frontier tech converges and can be packaged together into one mega stack that makes everyone very innovative. But we wouldn't like to talk about the theory, but about the practical use cases and about whether the enterprises in AI, that is assurance, compliance, provenance, auditability, are solvable by blockchain or not yet. So to start, let's do a quick kind of round about your AI x blockchain thesis, and what do you think are viable use cases now or in the near term, or if not, what are the kind of major inhibitors to that? Starting with Megan.
Yeah, well, coming in from the data storage side, I mean, I do think that there's obviously like a very, very strong use and need for blockchain in AI, and from our perspective, like using blockchain for data provenance, knowing exactly what the data is that is going into your training sets and into your algorithms is the way to have good data coming out, right? It's like a garbage in, garbage out using, Filecoin's unique content hashed IDs. We know that data hasn't been tampered with. We know what data is coming onto the network. And so that's like a real life use case of ways that we're using blockchain to ensure data provenance and to minimize this like fake news and hallucinations that are coming out of current AI.
Great. So the data integrity at the kind of foundational level.
Yeah.
Eric?
Oh, I thought you were doing this way.
Your
right.
AI thesis.
I was not ready.
We're popping
Keeping you on your feet. So
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
Yeah, no,
don't
that's
agree too
good.
much.
That's good, especially after lunch, right? You need to
Yeah.
make sure everybody is ready.
Digestion is fast.
Yeah. I think so. As Hashgraph, as Etera, we've built for about 2 years now what we call an AI studio. And an AI studio is an SDK and a bunch of code that you can use to actually engage if you are building AI platforms. Let's call that platforms, right? It could be a chatbot, it could be an LLM, it could be anything. You have a chance to connect directly to Etera through that SDK. So we make it easy for you to use. The reality is we've been talking about blockchain for a long time. I've been in blockchain for 12 years. Yeah, I look like it, I know. But 12 years in blockchain, and we've been waiting for the killer app for a long time. Stablecoin came around, killer app number 1, I would say. I think AI is killer app number 2, which means that the relationship between those two technologies has started and will never be undone. So there is no divorce after the wedding. That's my point. It's not about fake news. It's about never divorce the two technologies. But the reality is there is a lot of things to do on traceability, accountability. Earlier this week, I was talking to some people working in some of army in Europe, right? And they were saying, we need to make sure that when we use drones, those drones using AI, because they are autonomous, are going to be able to be recording the information they use to navigate, to take actions, to come back to base. And we need to record this information as the AI model is running so that we can reconstruct, learn, and audit what those drones have done. That's a real example of what we are working on, AI and blockchain.
Great, yeah, that's a great use case. Thank you. And 12 years, and then not a day long, and not a day old. Sylvia, can I ask you about your blockchain and AI thesis?
Of course. So I think that immediately my Web3 policy brain goes to this synergy that goes beyond trends, but it's about governance, because on the one hand, you have blockchain that gives you memory, traceability, but then AI gives you speed and automation. So I think the real power is in combining blockchain's transparency with the automation of AI, but without governance, I think that it can be a very risky combo. And part of what we aim to do at the Avalanche Policy Coalition is this concept of principle-based policy, not necessarily harmonizing it, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later, but you've heard the concept of, okay, same activity, same risk, same regulation, and I think that applies here too. Whether you're talking about an AI agent or a smart contract doing the task, I think that regulators still need to know, okay, what's the activity, who's accountable, how will we be able to audit it? And also, since we represent a blockchain developer, we need to talk about DeFi. So I think that one use case that we are watching closely is agentic finance, where you have AI-powered agents that can interact directly with smart contract protocols, where they can rebalance your DeFi investments. And it does sound very efficient, but it also raises a new set of questions. In this case, okay, who is liable if the agent makes a bad decision? And I think that's where blockchain helps, because it can store model versions, inputs, outcomes, so it can actually audit the system a bit later. So that would be like the use case.
And Paola, do you mind if I jump in with one thing
Absolutely.
before you? Okay.
Go.
And I mean, I think that's an excellent point that Sylvia raises, and I think it's sort of crazy to think in a world of AI agents that AI agents would use anything other than cryptocurrency, than a natively digital currency, as the currency that they're using. Like it's hard for an AI agent to call a bank and set up a bank account and get a credit card. But I mean, if you think about it, like cryptocurrency is the inherently, useful type of money that AI agents are going to use. So this kind of governance and thinking about AI finance, I think, is especially important because as we see AI doing more things in the world, they're going to start using cryptocurrency because it's an inherently digital native form of value.
Although banks customer service absolutely would deserve my agent calling to them and trying to get them out of my money, because I've spent hours on these.
Absolutely, absolutely, and maybe they'd be more effective, but there's probably still not a bank account at the end, right? Like I think we've all spent hours on the phone with our banks with very little success.
Absolutely, thank you. So Paola.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything that everybody said. Obviously, for me, the most tangible is this agentic finance using stable coins of cryptocurrency, because it has been mentioned, there are all these risks still on the AI hallucinations. So you don't want to empower them to have access to your bank account. Yeah. So this is the safest, and it's computer money. So this is what they understand. So I agree with all of this. And AI has been on the making for over 60 years. So finally it's coming out. So it's not that blockchain has been so long. It's the young thing. And into this point, I agree with everything. So then I would like something that I have experienced myself is like during the whole blockchain career, we have all these pilots, and everything takes time. And what we see now with AI is like speed is the main thing. And yes, we can do this, check the provenance, and which is definitely some blockchain brings trust, but the speed, for example, Visa has now this value trust protocol, which is based on just traditional cryptography, because this allows the speed with real merchants and so on. So I mean, I think that what blockchain needs to bring is like speed and real use cases, because we need to move. When ChatGPT was released 3 years ago, I remember I met here Jimmy Wales, and I was like, hey, are you not concerned? I mean, because for me it was very clear that we needed to have like a blueprint of data. And he was like, no, it's okay, we're fine. And the conversations completely changed for me. And useful thing at the beginning was just the provenance of media, all these fake news, and we had the solution. But between like, we lost these trains. So now I think it's like really the time to move. So that's why I have challenged the panel here to bring me fantastic examples, like the meat on the bone. So exactly. I'm challenging this time.
Perfect, thank you. I think there is already some kind of, maybe not tension, but stress placed in different places. So speed and agency versus classification and liability. So on which layer we stay, whether we do that at the hardware level, at the data layer. So I'd be interested to come back to Sylvia's points also about regulations and how do we govern for that, and in terms of adapting this to what we currently have, but also more forward-looking in terms of where we will see agentic finance can evolve, but within things that we can consider the near-term use cases.
Of course, thank you. So I think that when we hear regulation, on the one hand, it can be seen either as a constraint or an enabler. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how it's created. And if we are going to have smart assets, meaning tokenized, AI-powered, and responsive to real-world data, well, regulation should be smart also from the beginning. So I think that you hear about, harmonized regulation, but I think that sounds very lovely in theory, but in practice, it's a bit more nuanced, and I think that's where things can get a bit complicated. But instead, we advocate for coordination, or even better, extended coordination. This whole concept of principle-based alignment, especially around things like transparency, inclusion, interoperability, instead of trying to fit everything into one rigid box. And just as we saw that, at least in the blockchain sector, you need to classify your assets sensibly, I think also with AI, you need to be careful, especially relevant with how fast these AI agents will be transacted. So by having these first principles around technological neutrality, business model neutrality, and transparency, I think it can be a really good starting point, even if they're not exactly the same across all jurisdictions, but just aligning on this base, I would say.
Eric, can I ask you about this?
It's actually interesting. Last night we were having dinner with MIT, Deloitte, and a bunch of other big companies, and we talked about this notion. So if you remember back in the day, blockchain was supposed to be replacing ledgers, right? So we had 2 ledgers between 2 parties and 3 ledgers, blockchain being one of them, and then moving to 1 ledger that we all trust and no one needs a ledger anymore. And then in that context, we ended up saying we probably need something similar for AI, and we say we need globally accepted trust practices as opposed to GAP, globally accepted accounting principle. We say we need GATP, I don't know, maybe we need to find a better word, but globally accepted trust principles. And I think that's an interesting dimension to the regulatory space is we cannot wait for regulation to be standardized. We cannot wait for regulation to be ahead of the technology. It will never happen, or if it does happen, innovation will stop, right? So we need to take responsibility for those concepts of trust and embedding trust into AI. So we are ahead of that. We are ahead of the regulation. We have to do this.
So would you say, is this the main constraint now, or the use cases and the applications are actually not there yet? Because I think, to play the devil's advocate, there is some merit to saying, you know, a rushed marriage is a risky marriage, so let's make sure we tick some boxes before.
Yeah.
To come back to Sylvia's point.
So I think technology is not the issue anymore, right? If you look at what we have today, whether it's AI or blockchain, whatever we can dream of, we can build technology-wise. So I don't think technology is the issue. The second question you ask yourself is, what is a business case? How do I generate return by bringing those 2 technologies together and make an impact, whether it's a financial impact, an inclusion impact, like we talked about earlier today? That's the second question. On this one, we have a lot of questions still open. And then you have the regulatory environment. And my point is, the regulatory environment will never be good enough, so we have to be ahead of that, and we have to come up with our own standards, build something that makes sense, and then the regulators will come around and validate what we've done, or tweak it to make sure the guardrails that they have to bring are going to be accepted by the industry.
Okay, so Megan, we're pushing forward. The marriage is taking place. How do we make sure that we're on the right track? Where do we build this trust or these standards? On what kind of layer?
Yeah, I mean, I totally think that you're right, and that we as an industry need to come up with standards that are ahead of regulation, not wait for regulation, and also like not assume that regulation is going to actually have smart thoughts on it, because that, you know, usually takes a lot of iteration to get there. I think that we have like a massive opportunity with the adoption of AI to change the fundamental tech stack. I think that we can change things on like the hardware layer and the data provenance layer and the software layer to make things fundamentally more transparent in a way that we lost with, you know, the last wave of tech, that we like lost with Web 2. And I think that AI really gives us the chance to like take all these ideals that like people have talked about in Web3 and put them into practice, because AI is going to take, I mean, AI takes a tremendous amount of like data, it takes a tremendous amount of processing power, it takes a tremendous amount of like infrastructure build that is happening now. And so it's like the opportunity to put all of these ideals back in the fundamental tech stack, both in the hardware and in the data provenance.
Can you walk us quickly through kind of what that tangibly means in terms of AI for enterprises, also for kind of normal users, in terms of what are the challenges here that the blockchain can address?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think similar to what you were saying, by changing the standards of how we're thinking about what is normal for how like AI training sets are built, data centers are built. Like we're almost past it, but we're still at the beginning where all those things can, like those fundamental things can be shifted and can be built in a like transparent and open way, by demanding, like, you know, if not through regulatory means, but just demanding as a society that we have transparency around what data is being used in training sets. You know, that we have like models of training sets at different points in time as like upgrades are made, so you have like a record in time. That we can like shift, you know, the kind of like walled garden place that the internet is currently in, and as the internet moves to an agentic internet, it can be one that is like then open and transparent through both like social demands, maybe eventually regulatory, but like I'm with you, like I think we should not wait for regulatory. I think we should just, you know, push to have the way that AI models are built now be open and transparent, and it's very doable given that there has to be a whole fundamental hardware shift with all the new hardware being bought and built, like to create the agentic AI revolution on. I don't know if that made sense. So please, people tell me if that, like, okay, great.
A real example of what we've done. We worked with this company called Equity Lab, and you know.
Yeah, totally. I was also thinking exactly.
There we go. So that's a good.
So,
we didn't know.
Yeah.
We kind of prepared the panel, but we kind of didn't, and so we didn't know we were doing. But so Equity Lab, and you're going to tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
But Equity Lab is working on exactly what we are talking about, which is it's a team coming from Stanford, and they are working on the integration of trust into AI models. And one of the things we've done with them is we said, why don't we put a little bit of code that is Hedera code into the chips, Intel and NVIDIA. And that code is going to, when the chip is doing something with an AI model, whatever it is, anything on the supply chain of AI. So now we have that code embedded into those chips. And now we can activate that and make it real, make it actually tangible when you say, I'm going to run a model, and everything the model does on that Intel chip is going to be recorded on Hedera. That's an example of redesigning or designing from the bottom up the entire stack, right?
Absolutely. And also, you know, Equity Labs, who's great and, you know, works on this, use the, you know, Filecoin and the unique content hashes, the proof of the verifiability that this is the same data that was uploaded. Nothing has changed, you know, as their training data. And so, you know, they have trusted sources that go into the training data, minimizing the hallucinations that you're getting on the outside.
No, this is another very good use case and a very interesting example of what can happen. But I think I wanted to take this to Paola to verify whether that meets the kind of test for a killer app. Because I think a lot of people in crypto are talking about AI being the next killer app or blockchain being the next killer app for AI, or the other way around. Do you think that it's currently there and that the value is really added? Or we have these kinds of innovative things, for example, at the hardware level, but in terms of this changing something at scale within the industry, the problems that we're discussing and are not there yet, and there is no meat on the bone yet.
No, I don't think it's the killer app, because there's different use cases. I think that basically the AI industry can, especially for regulations, can really benefit of everything that blockchain has been suffering and trying to move. So I mean, I think we have a lot of things there.
More pain.
Exactly. Yeah. So and then it's definitely AI a multiplier for some of the boring tasks of blockchain, like verifying credentials and so on. So I think it can help out. What is interesting is to see that we are talking about merging a decentralized philosophy with like AI models, which tend to be centralized centers of like analyzing the whole data. And also we have to think like we used with the AI emergence, is we were saying that data is the new oil, but actually is once you take this data and train the model, that is the model that is valuable. So do we need to protect maybe with the blockchain all these models, but is it like agile enough, the blockchain, in order to sustain these big models of AI? So these are some questions that I have.
Adrian, I just want to double click on something. When I said killer app earlier, and I used my drone example in the army, that was. I hope you didn't take that as a connection, because it was not. I just wanted to make sure.
Let's hope that doesn't scale.
Yeah. Sorry. That was
I would say of all the places I think we should work to avoid hallucinations in AI is AI drone killers.
Yeah.
I mean, taking that example just on this killer, unfortunately, and this times, one of the use cases that Ukraine has been using is to have in a blockchain all the buildings they have, the structures that have been damaged, so that they are like, because they had this problem with the fake media from Russia saying like, no, we haven't destroyed this, there was nothing, and this has been this is a valuable thing that once the conflict is it's solved, they can come and say, hey, all this infrastructure of the country has been destroyed, and we have the blockchain sustaining that this happened. So this is just to be on this killer side. I don't like to talk this, but
I think what's interesting is we are talking about marriage between the two technology, and we are trying, I think, on stage here to justify why blockchain is valuable to AI. But we also have to think the other way around, right? In a marriage, it goes both ways. I think AI has a lot of value for blockchain too. I think 50% of the code that we built at Hashgraph and at Ethera today, 50% is coded by AI first, and then tested by AI, and then verified by humans. But there is the connection both ways. We need to remember that too.
So if I can add just one quick thing. Even the title of the panel says either like perfect marriage or more fake news. And technology aside, I think it all comes down to trust, because you can have an amazing person on one side and the other side as well. Same thing here. You have great blockchain tech, secure infrastructure, and AI that gives you automation, speed. But if there's not trust between them, and I think that it all comes down to the integrity of the data, you are just scaling the risk. So just because you're putting data on chain doesn't mean it's valuable. Just because AI can automate it doesn't mean it's trustworthy. So it's not whether, it's a perfect marriage or more fake news. It comes down to what data are you feeding into both systems, whether it's going to actually work.
Mm-hmm. This is also something I wanted to raise, that in this year's GSMI report, headed by Diana and our wonderful co-chairs, we did a report on decentralization and open source AI, and the challenge, some of the things that these things, how blockchain plays into that, but also in terms of, yes, you don't need to put all the data on chain or even any data, but what we can have out of this kind of both way relation is having some minimum cryptographic commitments in terms of anchoring fact about what was used, what has changed, who made what decision, what happened, and who attested to that. So we don't just believe that because the audit on blockchain tells us that this doesn't automatically reveal truth, right? It just gives us the output of the audit, but there's some challenges there. Bringing this to decentralization, and here I wanted to come back to you, Sylvia, in terms of if you think that there is some opportunity there for these applications to develop further?
I believe so, and I think even with decentralization, it all comes down to the fundamentals of understanding that it goes beyond having the fancy word, because I think that at the end of the day, you can claim to be a decentralized system, but you also have to be able to show, okay, for example, in the case of blockchain, how many nodes are there, who's operating it, and even coming back to the basics of understanding that there is no single point of failure, no single source of truth, no single entity with the power or authority to essentially change what's inside. So I think that if we stay true to the value proposition of decentralized systems, it can definitely be possible. But if we just slap on those fancy words, make it good marketing, but essentially just rebrand centralized systems, I think we're just back to square one.
But Paola, even if we go and stay true to the decentralized ethos, there are lots of challenges there in terms of how do you connect the different nodes, whether you introduce some poison into the code, a kind of time and synchronization issues. Do you think that the decentralization is a promising avenue for the connection between the technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also you could allow to have high high-level data more accessible to different locations, you know? So not like I mean, maybe we can look at having data like decentralized and as I said, like more accessible, which maybe reduces costs and so on for different sectors.
So currently, we started at the beginning with speaking a bit about agents and about autonomous decisions and automating, kind of introducing agents into the automation work. But now we're focusing more on the kind of verifiability data layer. What do you think about the controls that we can have in place for the events while they take place, that the damage is not done and we just come back to it later and make do?
Human in the loop, right? That's the question. How do you make sure that you will still have human in the loop, even though if you use decentralized systems and powerful AI models, we have to decide when there is a human who needs to be part of the decision-making process, right? So if the drone decides to kill someone, I would argue that someone, as a human, has to be able to make that decision. The drone should not be able to do that. If you want to make a transaction above maybe a certain amount, I would argue that that should be with a human in the loop. So the way we design all those systems have to account for that. If we don't, the risk is you can decentralize everything, but you still, to your point, making the wrong decisions.
But that's part of the challenge, no? Because we introduce drones partly because the pace on the battlefield is so fast that we need more automated decisions. So we can't have always the human in the loop in the crucial moments where the most damage can be done. Similarly in finance, if we have agents performing automated trade, maybe there is a situation in the markets where we can't have these controls sufficiently for humans to make the decision that would really build trust within the wider public.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I think there's always the tricky part when you look at it in the macro aspect, because even though you have regulation on one side, you also have the compliance aspect that you have to follow. And again, also knowing when do you put a human in the loop. I think that we can also focus on the micro aspect and education of the people that are actually interacting with these systems, whether it's the DeFi protocols on blockchain, knowing, okay, how do I interact with the system? What am I putting my assets into? How can I opt out of it? Same thing with AI, giving people the tools and the education. And I think that education can mean a lot of different things for different people. And I think we can just rebrand it as useful knowledge, because I don't think that every single person is going to take the time to understand, oh, this is how a blockchain works. Is it modular? Is it not modular? AI, and getting down to the nitty-gritty concepts, because I think that at the end of the day, we all use the internet, but not all of us have a deep computer science background knowing what happens at the back end. Maybe some people don't even code, yet they're interacting with the internet every single day. So I think it's the same thing with blockchain, with AI, just knowing, okay, what are the basics? What are the fundamentals? What am I doing? Without getting too bogged down by the details.
I just want to say I love that you mentioned the human in the loop, because even companies like Palantir, for example, for Swiss Re, their reinsurance, Palantir has created a model for them in which they do the analysis of 100,000, not the policies, the claims, and the model compares the claim with the policy and reviews everything and then flags the thing. The model is multimodal, so it reviews the papers, the videos, the photographs, the voice messages, everything together. It takes the ontology to review, and then it flags what the inconsistencies to call the human on the loop. So I mean, I'm talking about 100,000 a year. And it says, for example, it analyzes and tells you, yeah, the report mentions that during the fire, it was very windy, but the video submitted shows that the smoke is going vertically, so there's snow, and so it flags. And it doesn't it doesn't react or says this claim doesn't work. It just flags it to the human, and the human is the one that has to review things. On warfare, unfortunately, again, we go back to the regulations and compliance, because there are some treaties in which it's not supposed to be autonomous, that there should be a human on a loop, but yeah, compliance, it's a different story. But it's still in very highly advanced models on AI, and I mean, we all know Palantir, they have a human on the loop in most of the process, because still the AI is not reliable by itself.
Yeah. And Adrian, you mentioned technical challenges, right? You say, can I do a commercial break for a minute or no? Because Hashgraph and Adera, we fixed all of those issues, right? And actually, I think Filecoin did a really good job as well fixing those issues. I want to say the technology is now mature enough to address all of this, right? If you need a lot of TPS, we can do TPS. If you need finality of the transaction, fair ordering, all of that, I think the technology is ready for that. I don't think we need to use technology as an excuse to not engage.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 4 minutes left. So about the maturation of technology, I wanted to ask each of you very quickly, kind of 30 seconds, about where does it go in 2026? What's one standard, one use case, one policy or industry norm that you'd like to see, or that you think is likely in 2026 to make the AI and blockchain a kind of net positive? Starting with you, Megan.
So start with Eric. I'm
Starting with Eric.
I'm still thinking about killer drones. You know?
I do it easy because I think we have lost some opportunities on the blockchain, and I think we need to move really fast. Still working between more interoperability with the blockchains and say, okay, what can we do? And like no more pilot, like really bringing value and showcasing that.
Eric?
Yeah, no, I'm going to go back to the killer app, but I need to find a better name for killer app now. But what I'm saying is the merge of those technologies is now here, and now we need to find a consumer example of that, so that when I use whatever solution, maybe it's payments, maybe it's identity, I have a guarantee that my identity is not going to be used by someone else because of AI and blockchain together. Like a real consumer-facing solution, I think, would be really interesting to see in 2026.
Thank you.
My 2 cents on that would be that I'm just looking forward to more communication between the sectors instead of seeing it so fragmented, both among the tech, among the legal sector, the policy, both for developers to understand the policy implications of things, but also for them to approach the regulators and explain what they're building, to show them the many use cases for both blockchain and AI. Because I think that instead of just saying, oh, this is the definition of a smart contract, instead of just telling them, you have to show them. So just looking for there to be a closer bridge between the tech side and the regulatory side, I think that will really help us move forward.
Okay, now that I'm not just thinking about killer drones, I think for this next year, like, AI is moving very quickly, and I think, like, to the earlier question of like, is it intrinsically, you know, is blockchain intrinsically connected to AI, and are these like necessarily going to like grow together? No, and I think that now it's like we have this very short window to fight for it. We have a very short window to get, you know, to get the infrastructure that's being built now, to get the data that's being used for training models, to integrate blockchain and the transparency that comes with blockchain. We have a short window to make that happen, and I would love to see in this next year everybody in this industry like fighting for that, like fighting for it like it's a limited time thing, because it is.
Paola, any closing words?
That's what I'm saying. And if you like the Swiss environment, because you can talk with the authorities, just let me know.
So Sandra said yesterday, I think, mentioning about when people were talking on one panel, discussing that if there are any entrepreneurs in the room, please come to us. We have plenty of ideas. So I think that there is also always a good opportunity here at GBBC's events for that, because as you're saying, there's a lot to do between AI and blockchain. There's a lot to do between the industry and policymakers. So thank you so much, and please join me in thanking the panel for a wonderful discussion.